one of the most amazing athletes on the planet. She's really the only person who has an Olympic silver medal from 2000 in Sydney, Ironman World Championship from 2006, and then 10 years later, 2016, she guided a visually and hearing impaired woman to a gold medal in the first ever Paralympic Paratriathlon. Please give it up, the great Michellie Jones. So Michellie was with us last weekend. We were in New York, and I had pitched Lifetime Fitness on, hey, let's put some relay teams together and go after your course record here of 1 hour and 41 minutes. But each team had to have a celebrity athlete, they had to have a CAF athlete, and a media personality. So our team that we put together go after the record, Michellie Jones swimming, Floyd Landis riding the bike, and then Marco Cicchetto, who's a double baloney amputee who just ran 2:42 at Boston. That was our team, but then they canceled the race because of the heat. But it was, oops, that guy on. Michellie, there you go.
I was saying, obviously, the mayor of New York's never raced in Kona.
Yeah, they called it because it was too hot, not knowing that people actually start a marathon when it's 100 degrees. Yeah.
Or maybe it was Hunter Kemper, the course record holder.
Yes. Hunter didn't want us to break the course record.
He told them to cancel it.
Exactly.
He didn't want the record to go down.
So, Michellie, talk a little bit about growing up in Australia, and what were your sports growing up?
Well, let me talk a little bit about how I grew up. I'm a twin, identical twin. Gabrielle is my twin sister's name, so how fun was that? Having someone to play with, do sports with, although she will tell you that she's beaten me once or twice.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she
told
twice.
me she was the better athlete, actually.
Yeah, she said she's beaten me twice, even though we didn't do the same race on the same year, and I got disqualified in one race. So she will tell you that she's beaten me twice. So my parents divorced when I was very young. I have two older sisters. So mum basically raised 4 girls. And my mum was a little cray-cray.
Really?
This is how cray-cray she was. So our house caught fire when we were in our last few years of high school. She wasn't worried about the fact the house was on fire. She was worried about the police coming and finding the marijuana plants.
With good reason.
True story.
So were you competitive with your sister?
Yes, very competitive. I hated getting beaten by Gabby, but I probably hated getting beaten by other people more.
When did triathlon come into your life?
Well, my sport identification was race walking.
What?
That's what the Australian Institute of Sport identified me as, a race walker.
Long legs, I get it.
I'm like, hell no, you have to walk like 30K or something.
And it's silly looking.
Yeah, so I held a few records on the track for race walking when I was growing up, and it was my high school run coach, John White, that suggested I do a triathlon. And my actually first multi-sport event was a 1K swim in the Sydney Harbour and then a 10K run over the Harbour Bridge. And Gabby kept telling me I was going to get eaten by a shark. So, yeah.
And when did you find triathlon?
Like, that was pretty much it.
That was it?
That was the start of it. So in Australia, like, aquathons were pretty big.
Yeah.
And then I did my first triathlon way back in 1988.
Success right away?
I think I was second overall.
For your first race?
Yeah, and I didn't have proper cycling shoes. I just had running shoes and toe straps. Yeah, and that day there was also a professional race, and they were doing an Olympic distance race, and I'm like, there's no way I'm riding my bathing suit and running that far in a triathlon. I'm like, I thought like the sprint distance was plenty long enough.
But then you became serious about it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I paid my way through university. My friends were all jealous that I could go make a little bit of money and work on the weekends and doing what I loved, and they had to go get real jobs.
So you were making enough money to pay for college from triathlons?
College is a lot cheaper in Australia, but yes.
Yes. Now, I remember we met in Tahiti at a triathlon, like triathlon. Around that time. Was it 1990, 1989, something like that?
Yeah, 1990. 91.
91. Okay.
Yeah.
And you won that race. Sprint
Yeah, the
finish.
best thing, it was like $2,000 and you got a $2,000 black pearl. And I actually have won that race twice. So Gabby has a $2,000 black pearl and I have a $2,000 black pearl.
You won that race in a sprint finish. And then at that time, the U.S. is where it was at for triathlon. If you wanted to make a living, you needed to be in the U.S. So a lot of the Aussies would come over here.
Yes.
And you came over here.
Yeah, I think I was probably like the third Aussie. The first Aussie was Greg Welch.
Yeah.
Another girl called Liz Heppel
Yep.
came over and raced. And the Australians were known as big cheaters because they were told that apparently they were drafters. So I'm like, great, I'm coming in like reputation. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I actually, when I was growing up, I always wanted to come to the US. Never thought it was be for triathlon. And thanks to my high school running coach for pushing me, and came over here with $2,000 because San Diego at that point was the mecca of triathlon. And I wanted to race against the best people in the world.
And when you came here, you're living with Carol Montgomery, another pro, in a little
Heather
apartment.
Pure. Yeah.
You have a $500 Ford Maverick with a
Yeah.
roof that was coming off, right?
Column shift.
Column shift. There's a 3 on the
Anybody
tree.
remember the column shift? Yeah.
That's what they
You
had.
know, the worst thing was coming from the airport, you know, the steep hill.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's not like these days. You know, it's so much easier. Try doing that with
Yeah.
a column shift. And plus being Australian, where you
Wrong side of
like
the
opposite,
road.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Bob was always nice enough that when he went out of town, he would go, hey, Michellie, can you drive us to the airport? No problem. You can have the car for the weekend.
Yeah.
But then he did get me back one day.
Oh, that's right.
Tom Warren. Does anyone know who Tom Warren was?
Tom Warren won the second ever Ironman Triathlon World Championship, and he was a little bit of an eccentric guy, lived in Pacific Beach, and he, you know, when I first met him, he was actually training for the Ironman. He had, now it sounds like something Lionel Sanders does every day, but he had a bike and a sauna, and he'd ride for 5 hours a day, and we thought the guy was going to get, you know, put away in a home somewhere, because he was.
So was it his 50th birthday?
His 50th birthday, he decided he was going to run to Mexico, and he needed somebody to crew for him, and he wanted me to crew for him. Like, you know,
Bob's
bummer,
like, "Oh,
I'm
no
leaving
worries."
town, but I've got this young gal who will crew for you, because the only way she can get my car is if she crews for you.
And it was like at 1:30 a.m. in the morning that we started.
Yeah.
So, and I'm riding my tri bike for miles and miles to the border, and he's like, hey, Michellie, you want to keep coming? I'm like, hell no.
he was running to Rosarita or something.
Yeah, something crazy.
Yeah.
So thanks to Bob.
Yeah.
There's always payback.
He was the type of guy, this was before you had like a Timex watch. So when he'd leave the house, he'd call time. I don't know if you guys even remember that. You'd call time on a phone. Then he'd run to Tijuana, and his nightmare was there was a line around the phone booth when he got there. That was his whole thing.
Oh, yeah. He was
And
an
he'd carry his
interesting guy.
quarter. Yeah, he was a fascinating guy. So early on, we were trying to get Michellie sponsors, and no one was interested, right? They didn't.
No, you know, it didn't matter that I'd won, like, I think at that point when I first came over, I'd probably won like 22 out of 20 races in Australia.
Yeah,
but
pretty much all.
it
every
didn't
race.
matter what I did in Australia at that point. Now it's, you know, a little different. If, you know, coming from Australia, you know, triathlons, you know, it's way more prestigious.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. But here it was like,
Who's she?
so
Yeah,
this is America. You have to win races here.
So we called Dan Emfield, who you guys know from Slow Twitch, had a wetsuit company called Quintana Roo. He said, I've never heard of her, not interested. Emilio DeSoto had DeSoto Company. I'm like, I think this woman could be really special. And they're like, yeah, we're not interested. Then called the guy who just started the Danskin Women's Triathlon Series, this guy Greg Rourke, and said, hey, this woman looks Danskin. She could be a great model for you. And he goes, this is what I'll do. I really don't have money for this, but whatever she wins at my events, we pay 3 deep. Whatever she wins, we'll match it. So if she wins $500, she gets 1,000, right? And that was her sponsorship. And then the first race, she was third. The second race, fourth, and then won 25 in a row over the next how many years? Won a BMW.
Which is funny that you say that, because when I started then moving on a few years later, when I was sponsored by Reebok for many years, they couldn't even insure my race bonuses. You know, like in football,
Yeah.
when the athletes get bonuses, so they're all insured. It's like it's the chance. So depending on the chances, the premium's really high.
Right.
Yeah, Lloyd's of London wouldn't go anywhere near me. So Reebok had to pay all my bonuses. There was no insurance policy on them.
But Danskin just paid them.
Yeah.
Didn't hesitate.
They didn't realize.
Yeah, so here's Michellie Jones, who the year before really had been, struggling to get any type of sponsorship. So now she's in Sports Illustrated. In Sports Illustrated as part of the whole Danskin, not just for dancing program, with Katharina Witt and all these other amazing women from around the world.
And it was so great because it was about powerful, beautiful women.
Yes.
So, and that's one thing that I've always loved about triathlon. The majority of the times it's been, we race the same distances, we get paid the same prize money. And there's been a few times, like I was on 60 Minutes in Australia fighting to get women's professional triathlon, the same series at the men's series that they had down there. So I just love that about our sport, that we have this tiny little sport that has set such a high standard for making sure that we do get equal rights and equal pay.
So you won Carlsbad last weekend? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Did you win Carlsbad last weekend?
Yes, I did.
How old are you now?
I'll be 50 in a couple of weeks.
50 years old, winning overall. Not age group, winning overall, right? And how many races do you think you've won in your career?
I added it up many, many years ago, well before the Olympics, and it was over 200 victories. So,
200?
Yeah, and that was back before 2000,
So when we're moving towards the Olympics in 2000, at that point, triathlon was still a non-drafting sport.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, I was like, wish I was good enough to go to the Olympics. I didn't know what sport, but I'm like, how cool would that be, to go to the Olympics?
So where were you when you heard triathlon was going to be in the Olympics for the first time in 2000? It was going to be in Sydney, in Australia, right? Your home country. And at that point, I remember going to races, and it was going to be draft legal.
Yeah. And
that was a big deal, because at that point, we all looked at, because none of us have ever done draft legal races. I looked at somebody who won a draft legal race as the first cheater, because they were just sitting in during a bike ride. And it was a big argument in our sport, because we had some races where sometimes the top 3 people would get disqualified for drafting, and they would not take us into the Olympics unless we got rid of that whole drafting. You had to just let it go and accept drafting as part of our sport.
And I definitely was a purist. I wanted to swim, bike, and run, and I didn't really want that to happen, but I can understand why it was going to happen, because our sport was progressing. It was getting super, super competitive. And talking about the Olympics, this is how competitive the Australian team was. The year before the Sydney 2000 Olympics, at the World Championships, the Australians got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And only 3 women were going to get to go to the Olympics. So that's how competitive Australia was leading into the 2000 Olympics.
Well, and the main thing was for you, I remember, if races were not wetsuit legal, because the main thing with a lot of those races is you've got to be able to, this is before the whole draft legal thing. Those races, swimming was going to be at a premium. And
I sort of knew, like, early in my career, when I first started racing, I was dead last out of the water. Everyone thinks of me as a swimmer, and I just giggle because I just swim really well in open water, because for one, there's no flip turns, and I can swim straight. I'm really good at swimming straight. But it was like, I knew from the beginning I had to work really, really hard. And I had this one coach, Dick Kane, and I swear every single week I could tell you what our workout's going to be. Okay, anyone ever swam with a band? A band around your ankles? You should try it. It's great. We would swim 1 mile or 2 miles with band only. That would be our warm-up, because he said warm-up was turning the heater on the car on the way to the pool. And then every single Friday we would swim 16 400s. It would take exactly 90 minutes, because we'd swim in a long course pool, we'd swim on 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And boom, done, 90 minutes. No warm-up, no warm-down, just get in and go. And one time I was like, I've swam enough. I got out, went to the change room. Guess who comes chasing in after me? Dick Kane. He's like, you're getting back in the pool. And I'm like, no, I'm not. He said, well, you're not coming back. I go, I'll see you tomorrow. And I saw him tomorrow. I'm like, I'm not a little 6-year-old kid.
Right, you're swimming with these little kids.
Yeah, and that's so funny, because in 2000, Kevin McCary, who's a great run coach here in San Diego, he was my coach for many years, and I invited him to come and spend time with us at the Olympics. So he was in my room, that the federation didn't know that he was in my room for but right the night before the race, and I didn't get to march in the opening ceremony because we were on the first day.
First day.
And it's like 8:30, and he goes, Michellie, don't you think you should go to bed now? I'm like, Kevin, I think I'm old enough. I'm like 33. I think I'm old enough to stay up a little bit later to watch the opening ceremony.
What I remember is with Dick Kane, he was working with juniors. These were little kids.
Oh, yeah.
And you were the only adult in the pool.
Well, eventually he started getting more an adult program. But yeah, definitely I was swimming with all his kids.
And he would have the kids basically while you were swimming, he'd have the kids on the deck basically, and he'd be critiquing your stroke to the kids. And they're like 6 years old.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't a good example. He was saying what not to do.
He's pointing at her and saying what not to do. And these are like kids who are like 6 years old. So Michellie was the one he was calling out as she doesn't know what she's doing. Her stroke is awful.
If you didn't make this, like if you didn't make the time, it didn't matter. You just had to keep going until until the session finished.
So going into making the Olympic team, that was tough enough.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of pressure. Our first qualifying race was actually on the Olympic course, and
a year out.
One of my favorite races. I'd won on it before, and I sort of have a strong history, right? If I do well 1 year, I'm going to continue to do well. Hence why I've won the Alcatraz Triathlon 7 or 8 times, the Chicago Triathlon 7 or 8 times,
Carlsbad 10 times,
13 times. So that gave me a lot of confidence that I knew the course was well suited for me. So one thing that I decided from day one, I was going to do everything I did on any other day. And I think that sort of took the pressure off, because I'm like, if somebody wanted to do an interview, hey, I normally do interviews before a race.
Yeah.
I'll continue to do it. And I sort of didn't, a lot of the other Australians closed themselves off to the media and really put a lot more pressure on themselves. I just kept it the same. And that's one thing that I've learned over the years. That's why you do a race warm-up, because you don't have to think about getting nervous because you know where you need to be and know what you need to do. And I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed, was racing these big racing, but not changing. Didn't matter if it was the Olympics or the Carlsbad Triathlon. The warm-up routine was the same. And I think that's probably what set me apart from a lot of the other athletes. Yeah, it was going to be a big day, but I'm just going to wake up on the day and do what I do every other day.
The best part is we were over there for the Olympics, actually staying at Michellie's house, and going down that morning. And remember, this is the first Olympic triathlon. This is our sport that we've been involved with since 1978.
And what was so cool, it's like, here it is in Sydney, Australia, where all my friends and family from Australia could come and watch. Like, in any other city, there's no way that would have happened. And funny enough, I have a couple of superstitions. So I like to race in brand new race suits every race, and I like brand new running shoes. So race morning, in transition, and I always put my running shoes on and my bike shoes on just to make sure that
they're perfect.
Yeah. So put my run shoes on. They don't fit. They're half a size too small, even though they say they're the same size that I've been wearing, even though they're the same model that I've been wearing. Half a size too small. I'm like, we have about 90 minutes to the race start. I ring up my twin sister, Gabby. Gabby, have you left yet? She's like, no. And I'm like, can you bring my other pair of shoes? So she's literally handing them over the fence.
At the Olympics. At the Olympics.
as the transition's closing. Like 1 minute later, I wouldn't have been able to put them in. I would have been like, I don't know what I would have done. Maybe run with shoes that were way too small. I don't know. Maybe run with bare feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
we sort of were very lucky from a couple perspectives. One, we were going to be in Sydney, which is triathlon crazy, right? It was a country that was totally triathlon crazy.
Were you there the night after? And
yes.
I got mobbed.
Yes. Well, and I was setting that up. Yeah. Hello.
The police had to come and rescue us.
Yeah. So, but what was great is the woman who had produced the Ironman TV shows throughout the 90s, Lisa Lax from NBC, was producing the Olympics. And she was the one who pushed for them to start the games with the triathlon, to do a travelogue of the city. Here's the Sydney Bridge, here's the harbor, and use triathlon as a way to show the world how cool the city of Sydney is. So it was the opening event. And so all the chips were shoved in the middle of the table by NBC saying people will love this sport. Because remember, it's never been nobody's seen this version televised before. It's Ironman has been televised, not this. And the crowds were 10 deep, 20 deep.
It was crazy. It was like, it was so crazy that when the three Australians, the three of us were warming up, the crowd went nuts. They were going, go Aussie, go Aussie. Like you couldn't even like hear anything except for the crowd like going nuts. And this is the warm up. Our race hasn't even started. And then they announce you to come to the start line and you line up. And then I look up in the stands and Gabby's crying. And then I start crying, right? And that's one thing that I didn't realize how emotional the experience was going to be at the Olympics. I mean, it is the Olympics, but it's like, it's so emotional. And I'm thinking, oh, thanks, Gabby. Here I'm at, the biggest race I've ever done and bawling my eyes out. So, yeah, but very emotional.
Yeah. And the year before in a test race, was Bridget McMahon second?
Yes.
And you beat her there.
Yeah.
So then on race day, Bridget McMahon, Switzerland.
Yeah.
And I've watched Michellie race a lot. And I've seen her out sprint Michellie Jones, Paul Newby-Fraser. Every race I saw you at, you were out sprinting somebody. And so it's coming down to the last quarter mile, and it's Michellie and then Bridget McMahon, and I'm thinking, I'm in the front row, and I'm thinking, Michellie's going to win the gold medal. And I'm guessing you were probably thinking the same thing.
No, I don't like to think about like what the result's going to be until I cross the line.
Yeah.
Because, you really don't know. But, I knew it was going to be a downhill finish. I had practiced that because being a little bit taller, I have a little longer stride. If you're a little smaller, it's a little bit easier to get leg turnover. And it was just one of those things that I even did some tactics leading up to it. I got on her shoulder and pushed her just to see what she had. And yeah, and then all of a sudden we were probably 150 meters to go and we had to go around a little roundabout and then to the finishing chute. And it was all of a sudden she had 3 or 4 gears more than me. And it's I'm just trying to dig in and go as hard as I could. And it was one of those moments where it's when I crossed the finish line, I fell on the ground. And it wasn't that I was disappointed. It was just oh my goodness, I got beaten, but that doesn't matter because I got a silver medal.
You looked at, one of the things that impressed me the most is from that moment, it was never that you lost the gold, you won the silver.
Yeah,
you embrace
it's the Olympics.
that.
It only happens every 4 years. And how many people actually even get to go to the Olympics? How many people actually get to have
a medal?
A silver medal.
That's the silver medal right there, yeah. So
and one thing that I had told myself going into the Olympics, I already won 2 world championships, and I'm you know what, this is a bonus. Getting an opportunity to race triathlon in the Olympics, where I didn't know if it was ever going to happen in my career.
Right.
And I do get asked a lot the question about, do you wish you had the gold medal? And honestly, I don't. I mean, I feel like the silver medal was my destiny, and I sort of feel my life would have been completely different because a gold medal to a silver medal means so much to certain people.
Sponsorships, etc.
Definitely, there's that sort of thing, maybe. But then maybe I wouldn't have done everything else. Maybe the gold medal would have been it for me. And I think the silver medal was meant to be mine, and I get asked all the time. And plus, because of the controversy with Bridget testing positive a few years later on EPO, everyone's well, Michellie, you're really the gold medal. And I'm yeah, thank you. And I walk away and I go, you know what? I can live with every decision I made. I know that she can't. So it's one of those things where it's
Exactly.
looking back, I go, well, why couldn't I have done this and this and this for race tactics? But I didn't.
Yeah.
And, I still have an Olympic medal.
Yes, you do. How about a round of applause for our Olympic silver medalist? And that...
You know what was really cool at the Olympics? Because, you're in the village, so you're with everyone. So you're I'm oh my goodness, that. Does anyone know who Kathy Freeman is?
Kathy Freeman,
Aboriginal
from
runner, 400-meter runner.
From Australia.
She got to light the cauldron when it stopped.
In Sydney.
In Sydney. Yeah, so she was like an absolute legend. And I'm on the bus in the village, and first day, first medal event, we're done, right? So not only did I win Australia's first medal, right, I also won triathlon's first silver medal. So she was like, oh, Michellie, congratulations. And I'm like, sweet, Kathy Freeman knows who I am. It would have been like some like athlete that you guys like absolutely idolize in a sport, right? Yeah. That they're like well known, everyone knows them, like talking to you. And I'm like,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that was fun is...
No, the other better thing is...
Yes.
Sorry, Bob. So one of the things, you can't do it now because of security, but one of the things you could do in 2000 is bring somebody in. If you're a medalist, you get some privileges, right? So I could bring my sister Gabby into the village. I got permission to bring her in, so she got to experience it. But we had also an athlete liaison who would like come and talk to the athletes. And in 2000, it was Peter Brock, and he's a race car driver, my absolute idol growing up. Loved him. And he came and sat with Gabby and I when we're having some lunch. But she proceeded to tell him how much I was in love with him. Right? I'm like, he's never going to talk to me ever again.
That is so
I'm like kicking Gabby under the table. Like, thanks, Gabby.
Can I talk now? So the best part about that Olympic experience is she wins the medal, and I think she would have been happy staying at home, having a nice dinner, but that wasn't happening. So we took Michellie out and basically shared her with every park in Sydney had a big screen, and people were gathered around the big screen, and all it took was myself to walk into the park and go, we have with us right now the Olympic silver medalist from Australia, Michellie Jones, and 400 people would run over, and then
I got nervous. I always think, thank goodness the police came and got us.
But it did help us get into every nightclub. That's you carry one of those into a nightclub, you're getting in.
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's a cool thing, like being the first day, the first like event. Like we're done.
Yeah,
we're like suckers.
Walk in the final parade.
And we got invited everywhere. Like they'd ask me to do something. I'm like, sure. What else do you want me to do? And one of the cool things, one of the nightclubs was called The Last Lap. And you guys probably don't know who this. It's Tina Arena is a really famous Australian singer. And she was so funny. I don't normally swear too much, but she came up to me, and it'd probably be like, who's like a famous singer that you love, Bob? It
would be like Beyonce?
Yeah. Apparently Bob likes Beyonce. It would be like Beyonce coming up to you and going, you're fucking awesome.
That is pretty cool.
That's what she said. And I'm sorry I had to swear, but that's exactly what she said. And she signed some CDs for me. Back then it was CDs.
How did getting that silver medal change your life?
It was one of those things where now that I look back on it, I could probably have a little better perspective. Right. But I think it changed my life maybe more than I thought it did, because for me it was like, hey, I'm just going to go do my next race. And, I wanted to keep racing. Sure. So, the plan was to go and try to make the next Olympics and try to, win a gold medal. And it was working out great. I won the test event in Athens. But then I got injured and then
They didn't put you on the team.
No, but not only didn't they put me on the team, they didn't even put our current world champion. So I'm like, if they didn't pick her, we thought it was going to be either one of us.
Emma Carney?
No, it was Emma Snowsill who went on to win gold in Beijing.
So they could have had you and Emma Snowsill on the team in 2004.
Yeah.
And they had neither of you.
No.
Wow.
So it was just one of those things that, we sort of like had raced all season, and then a domestic athlete beat both of us. So a young, and, it was one of those things where the selection before was at a World Series event. This was just a domestic race.
So,
and it's so different, the racing.
Totally.
So then,
yes.
Guess what happened?
Guess what happened? Before that happened, Michellie had come over to see the Ironman with no interest.
That was way back in 93. Yeah.
93.
And
Michellie
I actually had
came
talked
over.
Gabby out of doing an Ironman.
Yes.
Years before that. I'm like,
it's stupid.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. It's the dumbest thing ever. So
Because I swore for many, many years.
yeah, Michellie was standing. We're standing by the finish. After the finish, Mark Allen had just won, and he's waving to the crowd and all the rest of it. And then 2 seconds later, he's on a stretcher. His body is throbbing. His feet are covered with blood. They've got an IV bag, and
Yeah.
Michellie
I'm
is
not doing
walking
this.
next to me.
This is stupid.
And she just, as they take him into the medical tent, basically to bury him, she looks at me and she goes, "Never,
Ever.
ever, never, ever." But now she's not on the Olympic team. Clock is ticking, right?
Yeah, and you know, the really sad thing is I didn't find out that I didn't make the 2004 Olympics from the Australian Federation. I actually found out from a journalist. A journalist rang me up
Oh my God.
and had told me. And I mean, I was devastated. I think I cried for days and days and days.
Sure.
Because, you know, I really felt that the Athens course was well suited. And
Well, you'd won on the race course.
and yeah, and it was probably the first time that I thought about, you know, maybe I should retire. And I really thought strong and hard about it. And I'm like, no, you know what? I love this sport. I love competing. And you know what? I'm just going to try to keep doing it. So then they talked me into racing a 70.3, Oceanside 70.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd done like a 70.3 distance a couple of years, probably like 1995. And I was devastated. It was one of the most devastating races because I bent down to put my shoes on and I couldn't stand up. I totally, my back totally like spasmed.
Welcome.
And we're in Fiji, and apparently they had sugarcane on the course. I don't remember any of that. Yeah. It was like, and I did it in like a swimsuit, not like a tri-suit, a full-on swimsuit.
Big mistake.
Yeah, big mistake.
Well, I remember Paula and Fraser.
Yeah.
Right. Paula was going to coach you to get you ready for Ironman.
Yeah.
Right. When you finally committed that you would do it. But I remember her first thing was the phone call she made to me, basically saying, because Michellie was my go-to person. Tinsel triathlon, whatever little triathlon was around, I needed someone to go with. Michellie likes to race as much as I do, right? So I call, hey, I'm picking you up at 4. Great, sounds good. Paula and Fraser calls me up. She goes, you are not to call Michellie ever again. She needs to be doing long bike rides and runs on the weekend. No 200-yard swim in a pool and a 4-mile bike ride. So all of a sudden, my playmate was gone, and she was training for the stupid Ironman thing. Was your first one Florida?
Yes, my first one was Florida. And
nutrition was perfect, right?
Yeah, I had the big bloated stomach. I think I started, my first mile was like 5:20 pace.
Which is good out of transition. That's good, yeah.
And I think my last mile was maybe like
10.
Yeah, maybe. But I still won, and I puked as soon as I got across the finish line, and I snapped my big toe about a mile from the finish line, and they had to carry me to my hotel room, which is probably only about 200 meters away, because when I crossed that finish line, I was done. I was like, my body was not going to like do one step more. And I said the day before, I go, look, if I qualify, here's my money. Don't ask me if I want to do Kona, because, you know, you never knew what your experience was going to be.
Oh, so you paid beforehand because you knew afterwards you wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a smart move. So now you qualify for Kona, and you come over for your first time to Kona.
Yeah.
But you were limited in terms of your run training. I think you're doing some injuries.
Yeah, I had raced the escape from Alcatraz and crashed. And it was funny because somebody came over to me and they're like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. They're like, no, we saw you crash. We're getting you in an ambulance. I'm like, no, I'm good. So they take me in the ambulance. And of course, I had a really nasty concussion, so I couldn't remember anyone's phone number. So here I am in my swimsuit, and the doctor firstly's going, what do you mean she was riding her bike in her swimsuit? And so I'm, in the hospital just in my swimsuit, not like being able to call anyone, and nobody knew where I was because apparently I didn't get picked up by the race ambulance.
It's just some other ambulance.
Somebody had called it in. So, and then I found out that I actually fractured my hip as well as having a concussion. And it was funny because I went into the doctor's office. No, it's just bruised. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's something more significant because I was getting like sharp stabbing pain every time I kicked when I swam.
Swimming,
walking up the stairs, the same thing. Sharp stabbing pain. So
your running was limited. You come over to Kona. You're leading.
So my second ever Ironman was on very limited run training.
And you led till 18 miles.
Yeah, I got past just as we were coming out of the energy lab.
Okay, by
And,
Natasha Bodman.
Yes, and I was willing my legs to go faster, but
They weren't doing
they were
it.
like, no. And I crossed the finish line in second, and I'm like, oh my God, I just got second in the Ironman World Championship. I'm retired.
Yeah,
And
right.
then 2 seconds later, I'm like, nah, I'm coming back to win this.
Which you did. You come
Yes.
back in 06
Yeah.
and win the thing.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, when I got second, the conditions I felt were like, pretty good. I think my bike split was 4:54, something like that, and it was Natasha and then Thurig.
Yeah, Karen Thurig, who was time trial world champion. Yeah.
They were the only two people that outsplit me, and my marathon was, I think it was when I got second was 3:18, something like that.
Right.
So, and the next year it was a little harder because my bike was over 5 hours. So, but I managed to run, I think, like 3:12, which these days isn't fast. But when you think how old I was like 37.
Yeah, 37, 38 years old.
Yeah. So for
And-
me, I had a short window, and I sort of have this theory. So, how there's dog years?
Yes.
There's also triathlon years. So time your age by how many years you've been doing triathlon by 7, and that's your triathlon age.
Oh, man.
So I've been doing, by the time
That's
I
bad.
got to Ironman.
No, I don't like that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my theory.
40 times 7.
Exactly.
Oh
See, we're
my
doing
God.
good. We're looking good up here right now.
Oh, my God. So one of the other races that always sticks out for me is when you're at I think it was in Mexico, World Championship. I think it was a World Championship, where you're coming in the transition, and this is the age of bladed spokes.
Oh, no, that was the World Championships in Australia, actually.
Was it Australia? Okay.
In 1997, I believe.
So before Olympics.
Yeah, so coming into transition, there was a group of us off the bike, and Isabelle Baton from France just runs her bike straight into the back of me, and bladed spokes. I looked down, I didn't see anything, got up, continued to run, put my run shoes on. I was running with 2 other Australians, Emma Carney and Jackie Gallagher, and doing fine. We're all together. And then all of a sudden I started like losing them, just like ever so slightly. And I'm thinking, what's going on? At this point I had no idea that I was bleeding and leaving footprints of blood as I was running along. Had no idea.
Your shoe was
I knew
totally
there was
full.
something going wrong. I'd been running really well. So I was like, I just had no idea. So I managed to like hang on for third, and I crossed the line, and I literally like passed out. And then I needed like 3 stitches in one foot and 4 in the other. And yeah, and I have this picture of me, like it's like probably 40 degrees outside, which is probably like 90, 100.
Yeah, it was hot. You were in
and
a
I've
blanket.
got a blanket on.
Yeah.
And that you can just see my bloody feet. So
That was pretty gutsy. That was pretty
I
cool.
just had no idea. I didn't ever look down. But yeah, they said like my shoes, if you see the picture, my shoes are so thick in blood. I'm like lucky that I even made it to the finish line.
So Michellie was
I
one
don't
of
think
those,
I was tough. I just like,
Yeah.
hey, I just got race mode and off you go.
So over the years, when we first started San Diego Triathlon Challenge and Challenge Athletes Foundation, Michellie was one of the pros who came pretty much every year to help out. So when you get approached by Triathlon Australia and they say, listen, we'd like you to pace a visually impaired and hearing impaired woman for the 2016 Paralympics, and the first ever Paralympic Paratriathlon, is sort of a pattern here with you. What were your thoughts?
Well, I got a call from the head coach, Corey Bacon, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I've never ridden a tandem, but how cool is this? And then my second thought was, man, I hope she's not a pain in the butt. But yeah, it was one of those things where, for one, I live in the US. She lives in Australia. And I did ask them a couple of years later why they decided on me. And actually, I was second choice.
Oh.
Thank goodness, which is funny because it was Emma Snowsill who was first choice.
Yeah.
Because she was more her height.
Right.
And because I was so much taller than Katie Kelly, they were worried they weren't going to get the tandem.
Right.
Right. So thank goodness Emma Snowsill was pregnant.
And you got the gig.
And I got the gig.
I like that. So
I don't know if anyone would do that like now, like have a guide that lives
right
internationally. But the thing is, a lot of the guides, they don't train with the athletes. You see that a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I love is I think it was a race in Italy, one of the first races you guys did together.
Well, yeah, our first race was Japan, and we just had this like dinky die little tandem. And I think that was the one and only time I thought we were going to crash. And I'm like, oh my God, what if I crash her?
So then you're in Italy, and you guys come off the bike, and you're about a minute down. And then those races are sprint distance. So 750 swim, 12.4 bike.
And they're very dynamic because they're very technical. So you're like going to corners hard, coming out, blah, blah, blah. So the run, we had one lap to go.
You had one lap to go, and you're
we're about a minute down. And
what'd you tell her?
I just told her, it's like, if you want this, you better go now.
You're going to suffer.
Yeah, and it's really hard because she is hearing impaired. It's like the discussions we have are very limited because she doesn't race with hearing aids. But she got the message. Because she sort of knew if I was really loud and obnoxious,
that she better run hard.
That was like a key. Because if there was quiet, everything was good. And it's like, I know where everyone is, but she doesn't. She, has no idea how far we have left to run. So I've got to communicate with that. I got to, just keep her focused. So she was running and that's what I loved about Katie. Like, she was willing to dig as deep as can be. That's her talent, is that she can dig deep. And she crossed the line and she puked.
Welcome to Michellie Jones's world. Yeah.
That's what she said. But I said, you won, didn't you?
Exactly.
So.
And then going to Rio, and really, it's 16 years since your Olympic experience.
Yeah.
And now
paratriathlon is going to be in the Paralympics for the first time.
Yep.
And I mean, it wasn't easy for Katie because she got injured a lot. I mean, every major race we did, she either had a stress fracture or something was going on. So for me, I was sort of also not just the guide. I actually had to make sure she had enough confidence.
Sure.
So I'm like, it's only a 5K. Anyone can run a 5K.
What's
Because we only
deal?
had a couple of weeks running leading into Rio. But I'm like, we're going to swim and bike as hard as you can. And then whatever you got left for the run, it's only a 5K. And that's what I kept telling her, anyone can run a 5K. A 10K is a little different. 5K, anyone can run.
And coming down that final stretch, knowing you're going to win a gold.
I think I was more excited than her.
Because the guide gets the same medal. That's the Paralympic gold medal right there. Yeah. And what's fascinating, and if you guys get a chance, it actually, for people who are visually impaired, it has sand in it. Is it sand or little
beads.
Little beads, so you can tell the difference between gold, silver, and bronze.
Yeah, they make a different noise.
They make a different noise. So it's...
Yeah, so I really think I was way more excited. I think maybe because I had been to the Olympics and, I mean, she was excited, but I think I was really excited because I'm like, oh my God, we did it. Because with all the history of the injuries and even trying to get into the races, it's really highly competitive because when you're coming into a sport when people are already started qualifying with points, we couldn't even get into races. So we had to go wherever we could get into the races, and then dealing with the injuries. It was tough. It was really, really tough. So I was just so proud of her that she held it together on race day. And when we were lining up on the start line, I said to her, I go, this is going to hurt like you've never hurt before.
That's pretty cheery.
But I said, it's going to hurt like it's never hurt before, but it's going to be well worth it. And it was for me. I know it was for her because, to be given the opportunity, because everyone was thanking me. I'm like, excuse me, I should be thanking you guys for giving me this opportunity because it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. Giving an opportunity to give back to somebody else and help them achieve their goals. That's, for me, it's like, thank you.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How about a round of applause for the great Michellie Jones?